Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Pace. I'm the AI/ML Practice Director for Quantiphi. I'm joined here today by Amit Singh from AWS. And we're going to have a quick chat about the AI/ML trends that we're seeing and what the evolution of this innovative technology is going to do for our particular industry and for businesses, organizations such as yourselves. Amit, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Stephanie, good to be here with you, and hello, everyone. My name is Amit Singh, and I'm part of the AWS Partner Organization. I lead worldwide go-to-market and use cases for our AI and machine learning partners. Great to be with you today, Stephanie.
Oh, great to have you here. So obviously, 2024 has been a pivotal moment in the evolution of AI and ML. Although we actually saw a lot of progress over the course of the last 5 years, certainly 2023 and 2024 has really been the time where the hype cycle has kicked in, and really it's become front and center of every discussion in every C-suite. I was wondering, do you perhaps want to articulate some of the things that you're hearing from customers inside AWS, or trends that you're seeing emerging as those discussions become more and more front and center?
Absolutely. I think 2024 is definitely the year where we are seeing a lot of activity happen. 2023 was the year where we saw a lot of proof of concepts happen. This year, we are seeing customers really starting to evaluate how they take these use cases and workloads into production. And there's a lot of talk about moving from use case to actually the business case, which is when customers start to derive value out of these investments. So some of the trends that I'm seeing are number one is multimodal and multimodal capabilities. So there are kind of two things in there. Number one is there is an evolution in terms of the large language model as well as the foundation model capabilities when it comes to different modalities. So we are seeing modalities expanding and covering areas like text, code, audio, video, images, 3D, as well as now even getting into the smell as a modality. We also see this converging over time. If you look at the different foundation models that are being released, a lot of the foundation models are converging some of these capabilities into the same model, and we'll see continue to see that happen. The second is multi-model future, where customers are really evaluating multiple models at the same time. Almost 93% of the enterprises are currently using 3 or more models for their use cases. And I think this trend is going to continue as this space is continuously innovating, and customers do not want to place their bet on any one single model. They want to pick the right model for their use case. So multimodal and multi-model capabilities. Second is the kind of conversation around large language models versus small language models or domain-specific models. And this trend also is pretty interesting to observe. There are a lot of good inherent capabilities that large language models bring, while the small language models can bring in the domain adaptation and can be much more relevant for specific tasks, whether it is industry specific or use case specific tasks. The third key trend that we are seeing in this space is really the responsible AI. And if you have been following this space, there have been EU AI Act, as well as American Data Privacy and Protection Act, and AI governance is a key area where customers are really starting to evaluate as. And the other two kind of trends that I'm seeing, particularly around employee enablement, there is a lot of concern around what AI is going to do to the employees as well as humans. I think the best way to kind of think about this is that AI is going to start augmenting the workflows of employees. It is going to make employees more productive. And what it means for enterprises is that they need to start investing in providing the right training and support for their employees, make sure that they understand what are the benefits of generative AI and how they can start working with AI in a co-pilot mode more effectively going forward. So kind of providing them the right support structure as well as that learning curve as they start to kind of see the productivity improvement benefits. The final thing I would mention is that customers at this point, they are not necessarily worried about the cost, but then cost will become a major factor as customers think about really kind of putting in dollars behind these use cases and investment areas. And what we are seeing is from an ROI perspective, only like 4% of customers today are not considering ROI when spending on large language models and generative AI. 56% of the customers believe ROI is positive while they're not specifically measuring it. And then 31% of the customers are deriving ROI from cost savings, and 9% of the customers are deriving from net new revenue opportunities. So as you can see, this space is going to continue to evolve, and these are the 5 major trends that I see in the generative AI space today.
Yeah, well, that's great. Just to dive into one of those that you mentioned that really caught my attention, you were speaking about large language models or LLMs versus domain-specific LLMs. So potentially something like an Anthropic or a Claude 3 versus something that is created to be domain-specific for, let's say, healthcare life science, or maybe it's FDA specific. How do you see companies kind of finding the optimal balance between generalization and specialization between large language models and domain-specific LLMs? And how are they?
So those are kind of some of the considerations. A couple of other things I would mention are evaluation considerations when it comes to picking between the foundation models as well as small language models. Sometimes evaluating small language models can be hard, particularly for domain-specific use cases. For large language models, evaluation is being solved. There are a lot of features and capabilities, including from AWS, that are being provided, which customers can start to use to identify what is the right model for their use case, depending on what parameter they're solving for, whether it is cost, performance, or latency.
So one of the things that I've found very interesting in having discussions with various organizations is the value of using, I'm going to say, a common framework or a common platform, such as Bedrock or the Quantiphi Bionic generative AI platform that's built on Bedrock, to be able to create a multi-tenant type of environment for one specific organization that has a multitude of groups that are trying to do things within the space of generative AI. And they are potentially using different models for different use cases or different business problems. So I think there's also a nuance there about understanding what it is that that particular business group inside the customer is trying to solve for, and what the best model to choose for that particular group is, beyond just simply one customer as a whole choosing one particular model.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a great point. And that's why if you look at the philosophy that AWS has had in this space from the very beginning, is that and this is something that we are seeing from a lot of our customers as well. According to the Anderson Horowitz kind of survey, typically customers are using almost like, I'll have to go back and check the numbers exactly, but almost 90% plus of customers are using 3 or more models for a given use case. And that's why the choice is really important. And if you look at it, Amazon Bedrock offers foundation models from some of the leading foundation model providers like Anthropic, AI21 Labs, Stability AI, Cohere, Meta, as well as now Mistral, and then of course our first-party models, Amazon Titan, and then Quantiphi's Bionic is actually built on top of Amazon Bedrock, so it also offers the same amount of flexibility and choice to our customers. So I think that is really important for customers to be able to pick the right model for the right use case. The second is that this space is evolving very rapidly. And if you have been following this, there are new models being announced almost every day. And they make most of these models, if you follow, they come up with new architectures. For example, the AI21 Labs announced the Jamba model, which is a combination of transformers plus additional techniques, which are purpose-built for increasing context windows and then things like that. So customers do not want to just put all of their eggs in one basket.
Yeah, it's interesting. we've been doing a number of what we call generative AI advisory workshops with customers. And what we do in that process is we actually kind of do bi-directional sharing, go through exactly what the business use case is, how to implement it, what is the data journey to get to that point. And when we do those workshops, two of the biggest barriers that we see is the first, time to value. How not to build something that is incredibly expensive, but ultimately is very difficult to measure the ROI. The second is around stakeholder buy-in, which ultimately leads to privacy and responsible AI concerns. I would say 7 out of 10 customers that we do this workshop with state that they have Gen AI projects or even AI ML projects that they do a proof of concept on, but it never ultimately moves out of the sandbox and into production because there are concerns around privacy, compliance, and obviously legal is absolutely critical to being part of that process and that journey. From your perspective, how do you think organizations can ensure responsible and ethical use of AI/ML while still driving innovation so that things don't get stuck in the sandbox, but ultimately we are being responsible in terms of how we employ AI/ML or how customers choose to employ AI/ML with obviously the governance and sensitivity around privacy and data that there is?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually a very relevant point that you bring up. A lot of the workloads are not moving beyond POC or the sandbox environment into production, primarily because of considerations around risk and compliance, as well as kind of just customer stakeholders not being completely bought into it. So I think there are a few things I would suggest here. And then before I get into like those suggestions, I want to kind of start like why customers are concerned, right? So, I mean, with regards to generative AI, these are kind of powered by large language models or foundation models. There are a few limitations that these models have, and particularly around hallucinations. And a lot of times the response from these models are not completely traceable. So there is a bit of that lack of explainability to a certain extent as well. Then, of course, there are additional considerations around toxicity and safety, intellectual property concerns, as you may have heard, like some of the foundation model providers being sued by some of the leading media companies out there. There are data privacy concerns, data safety, and security concerns as well with regards to these foundation models. So I think customers are right in making sure that while they do care about getting the productivity and additional revenue impact benefits out of deploying this generative AI technology, first and foremost, customers want to protect their businesses, right? And that's where these concerns are coming from. So from that perspective, my first piece of advice to customers would be that they should be paying considerations to the responsible AI dimensions, and there are a few of those. So, for example, controllability, privacy and security, safety, fairness, veracity, robustness, explainability, as I said, transparency and governance, and make sure that they are solving for as many of these as possible. And they should be looking to incorporate responsible AI best practices end to end throughout the application development process while selecting the foundation model, while looking at their prompts, as well as identifying the architectural considerations that they want to use for solving for their use case. And then the second thing that I would say here is that take a people-centered approach, engage with multiple stakeholders, educate them about what are the benefits of AI, what are its limitations, build a diverse set of teams, and take like a holistic approach to developing generative AI applications. I think that goes a long way in kind of building that consensus across these different stakeholders and making sure that they are completely bought into the use case and implementations that customers are trying to achieve. The third thing is, and related to the second point, is that you want to involve your legal and compliance team from the very beginning. We are already seeing that customers who do that are more successful in making sure that they address all the different concerns that the legal and compliance team may come up. So involve them early. They will get involved eventually at some stage. So it's better to involve them early on in the process and make sure that you have their buy-in. They can flag in what use cases are relevant for the application of generative AI at the very beginning, if they understand what this technology is, what its limitations are, and how do you plan to work around those limitations and solve for those limitations. So involve them early and get inputs from them early on in the process so that you do not run into any surprises later on. So I would say these are the things that I would recommend that customers plan for to increase their likelihood of taking the workloads beyond POCs and sandbox environments into production.
I think you're absolutely 100% right. The other consideration that we've been coaching customers on is try find the quick wins. So time to value matters. We can do a really expensive implementation of a generative AI project, but potentially that is not the one that actually has the best cost benefit analysis. And sometimes actually it's the small wins that ultimately get the board or potentially the C-suite comfortable with the concept of harnessing AI, ML or Gen AI in the organization for, I'm going to say, smaller, let's say more operational efficiency-based workloads, rather than something generative like creating images or content. It can sometimes also help ease that path in bringing Gen AI and AI ML into the conversation about those wins that can be gotten and those efficiencies that can be had, those costs that can be reduced, rather than it becoming creating something from nothing and potentially having IP infringement issues that kind of accompany that.
Absolutely. I think time to value is absolutely important. And I think you bring up a great point, particularly like I think customers want to start with identifying areas where they can get early quick wins, right? And then building on from there rather than looking for that big thing and kind of putting all of their investments behind that. I think the best way to kind of think about that is like identify areas that are internal to your own kind of company. For example, how you can put generative AI into the hands of your own employees. And that could be your legal and compliance teams. It could be your customer service agents. I think that's an area where we're seeing a lot of initial interest, particularly from generative AI. Software developers, software engineers, that's another safe place to start. So think about how you can put generative AI into the hands of your own employees and for use cases that are not really your end customer facing, if you will, in a way. So I think the best place to start are internal use cases. And then once you see the value of deploying generative AI for these internal use cases and you see the productivity improvements that employees are getting out of this, and you have seen like all the numbers, like the developers can improve their productivity by up to 53% in some cases by incorporating some of these generative AI co-pilots like Amazon Code Whisperer and now Amazon Q for builders. So these are the kind of areas where customers should be starting to invest in early. And once they see these early wins, they can start to move more towards areas that are external to their company, and then that actually touch their end customers. So I think customer service agents is a good place. I think it's right in the middle. A lot of the kind of generative AI implementations that are happening right now, they touch the customer service agents, but then customer service agents, as they're getting the real-time assistance from generative AI, whether it is coaching by their managers or coaching right in the app, almost in real time as they're conversing with the end customer, they can point to the benefits of, or for example, like they can point to upsell of some of the products that they have while they're conversing with the customers as they're solving the pain points of the customers over the call. So those are the things that can start to blend into external facing implementations of generative AI. And then I think bringing back to the time to value, you want to start with early wins, put some kind of numbers on the scorecard, And that will increase the confidence of your executive leadership as well as the board to invest more and provide more investments in these areas once you have proven the initial value of generative AI.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're definitely seeing that too. And it's how we're coaching our customers as well, or our joint customers, is also around things like how do we harness AI, ML, and generative AI to make the humans that exist inside your organization just that much more efficient, effective, and sort of that much better. Things like manual data capture, which was previously kind of a norm, is no longer necessary if you harness AI ML. So how do you then convert those valuable human resources that are sitting inside your organization to have to harness cognitive functioning, so as a kind of a human in the loop to catch, tag, and flag potentially things that need to be remediated, or that really only a human would be able to have the intrinsic awareness that there was an issue with something, rather than the human doing manual data capture, which actually is relatively easy for machine learning to do these days.
Absolutely. I think human in the loop is a great example of where customers can, instead of completely or 100% relying on AI, there are use cases where customers can, for example, even just like responding to an email, right? Or like creating the first draft of, let's say, a contract that you want to kind of work on, or a first internal draft of, like, let's say, PRFAQ in the case of Amazon as an example. Yes, you can use AI as a starting point, and in a lot of cases, the AI will get you almost 80 to 90% there. And then you want to have the human in the loop, and the human in the loop is important so that they can review the AI output that has been generated, make sure that they're good with it, and then kind of, let's say, in the case of email, hit the send button. And then, let's say, in the case of contracts, they can start to customize those contracts and add their own color and insights and the expertise that they bring to, and more contextualization honestly, right, in terms of what they're working on. So I think human in the loop is absolutely critical. And then given where we are with AI, we may get there, but we're not there yet in terms of reasoning and decision-making capabilities. We are not there completely in terms of like fully automating many of these tasks through AI itself. I think there has been a lot of innovation around agentic AI and like what AI agents can do. They are able to do a lot of different things, but then there are areas, particularly sensitive areas in the regulated industries like healthcare and life sciences, for example, where you still want that human in the loop to take that final decision.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot in terms of, you mentioned regulated industries, but we're also seeing it in terms of public sector and higher ed as well, where if it's a transcript or an application to a college or anything like that, the sheer volumes are incredibly overwhelming. And suddenly the ability to harness AI ML to be able to streamline that process and provide a better, what I would say, constituent experience is really, really crucial. And it just helps government agencies and also colleges and sort of high schools, etc., just get that much more tuned into how they can actually connect with the end user or the constituent themselves, rather than getting bogged down in either the paperwork or the requirements that are sort of necessary as part of being in that legislative framework.
Absolutely. I think the public sector is another great example of where we have seen generative AI being kind of applied by both government agencies, education sector, and then, I mean, on the government side, of course, like starting from federal government all the way to state and local governments, where they are really investigating the use of generative AI. For example, I think some of the healthcare falls in public sector. And even though it is regulated, what we are seeing customers in healthcare worry about or concerned most about is the privacy. So how do you bring the right privacy controls in place? For example, with HIPAA compliance, right? You want to kind of make sure that the customer's PII data is not readily shared or accessible, or doesn't get exposed to these foundation model providers. So we are as part of Amazon Bedrock offerings, we are providing guardrails, and within guardrails, you can put in the natural language prompts to the kind of output you want to control. And then, of course, with the AWS, customers' data doesn't get shared with the foundation model providers.
So while it certainly comes across in this discussion, and obviously the first half of 2024 has been very much driven by, we said, time to value and also ethical and privacy considerations. What do you think the latter half of 2024 will be topical in terms of generative AI and AI/ML? Like, what trends do you predict are going to be sort of late 2024, early 2025? What do you think is going to be the hot topic, if it's not still privacy, compliance, ethics, and obviously time to value? What do you think is going to be the next topic on everyone's lips in terms of Gen AI and AI/ML?
I think if I have to just kind of put that into one thing, that'll be the agents, AI agents. And this is really an area where we'll see significant improvements happen. There are already big announcements being made in this space by all the leading technology providers. And you'll see this space expand much more, I think, in the second half of 2024, and then early 2025, you'll see massive innovations in this space. The reason I say that is, if you look at the generative AI today, a lot of this is, of course, I think with all the chat GPT stuff, and customers or like humans, and like you and I, right? People like us, we are interacting with AI, and that's pretty cool, right? And of course, the context windows are kind of increasing. We are experimenting with things like retrieval augmented generations. There are chatbots, there are virtual assistants of all types being built, whether it is legal co-counsels or, for example, even like HR assistant, or even your concierge for if you're going to a hotel, right? So all of these different virtual assistants and concierges being created.
It's a great point, and I'll echo that in saying that what we're seeing is how we're using AI/ML and generative AI to have a more personalized experience with end users, and whether that's via agents or whether it's just simply kind of getting more fine-tuned around personalized experiences, whether that's neurodivergent stakeholders or constituents, or whether that's different types of demographics. Just that kind of personalization aspect is definitely coming more and more into the forefront as we see that end user autonomy, it becomes incredibly important, because ultimately, while we are interfacing with machines, we ourselves are still individuals. But to that point, as individuals, thank you very much, Amit, for joining me here today, having a chat about the wonderful stuff that is generative AI. We are so incredibly blessed at Quantiphi to partner with AWS, and look forward to building the AI/ML and generative AI future with you. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. It was great chatting with you, Stephanie. And looking forward to our partnership more closely with Quantiphi.